Finally, we have some concrete names that the Sixers may be interested from a trade perspective. After all this theorizing, all these rumors, all these whispers, we have set in stone a report from Jake Fischer of Yahoo Sports identifying who the Sixers may be targeting at the deadline. I want to break down those specific names and how I feel their fit is on the Sixers in this specific video. But before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 76.7% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel just yet. Do greatly appreciate the 23.4% of you that have already joined the Sixers Digest family. But this is the crunch time for Sixers season. We are heading for this final get past the trade deadline and enter the playoff push. Hopes are still open that Joel Embiid will return, and I am hopeful that there will be a championship contending team built to surround him when he does step back on the floor. And Jake Fischer shed some light on who those players could potentially be. So without further ado, dive fully into it. Begin with this report from Jake here, who writes, even in the wake of Joel Embiid's knee surgery, the Sixers are hoping to move a future swap to acquire more imminent first-round picks, sources said, than the first-round capital that Philadelphia currently has available. The Sixers' soonest pick they can trade won't come until 2026. So while Philadelphia's 3 picks it yielded in return for James Harden would suggest the Sixers have plenty of ammunition to go out and acquire a meaningful player, Philadelphia seems to be prioritizing ways to buy now while maintaining future flexibility. So just a quick note on that. Very clear what these Sixers are trying to do as far as shift maybe a 2028 first-round pick for a more pressing 2024-2025 first-round pick in an effort to make a more cohesive and appealing draft capital just offer to teams. Makes sense from the standpoint of teams wanting a more of a win now piece. You know, it's obviously much more appealing to have that draft pick right in front of you. So Sixers just trying to climb that ladder a little bit. And that does mean, in my mind, that there's likely a deal in place that they just have to get to a specific number or set year that they want that draft pick in. Now, to finish up this thought here, Fischer writes once again, Philadelphia is exploring conversation with a variety of teams, but one known target for the Sixers is Pacers guard Buddy Hield, league sources told Yahoo Sports. Hield's $18.5 million salary would be a match for several of the Sixers' expiring contracts, and his expiring deal wouldn't add future financial burden onto Philadelphia's clean cap sheet for this offseason, as the Sixers have left rival teams with the impression that they are still wary of taking back long-term salary at this juncture. So I've talked plenty on here about the Sixers cap space plan, how they want to keep all financial options available this offseason. Frankly, I don't fully agree with this method because of the reasons that we just don't see stars switch teams or notable players switch teams in free agency these days. That is so much more common, a part of a trade package or a way that works for both teams, similar to what James Harden did by opting into his contract or what the Hawks are currently doing with DeJounte Murray, who has not even kicked into his extension they signed last offseason, but the Hawks knowing that they would rather that be the case so they can at least get something in return for him rather than just allowing him to walk with things not working out. But the name that is mentioned here for the Sixers is Buddy Hield. Now, Buddy Hield is a guy that has been a forever almost Sixer. That I feel like we've talked about him in trade rumors year in and year out, and for good reason, that he absolutely would be a fit on the Sixers roster. Now, to dive into what Buddy exactly brings to the table, taking a look at his stats this year, on the season, averaging 12 points per game, seeing his minutes and opportunities cut back a little bit, going from 31 minutes per game last year to 25.7. That is the fewest minutes per game that he's played since the 2017-2018 season back in Sacramento. So kind of falling out of favor there. There has been a little bit of some odd Twitter antics going on with Buddy Hield, a burner account accusation talking about him not wanting to be in Indiana, all these things. But the bottom line is the guy can still hoop. And to look more at these stats, from beyond the three-point arc this year, a little bit of a down year by his standards at 38.2%, but still at 6.9 attempts, which is ridiculous in the span of 25.7 minutes per game. And through his career, he is a proven shooter, a 40.1% three-point shooter on 7.7 three-point attempts per game. You even want to look a little bit further back that just last season, shooting 42.5% on 8.5 three-point attempts per game. And he's not just a shooter, that you're looking at these stats. This season, also averaging 3.2 rebounds, 2.6 assists. I do think Buddy's a better overall basketball player than he gets credit for. That he can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He can defend a little bit. Not a great defender. Can pass a little bit. And my biggest point here, and this applies to both names that I want to bring up in this conversation, the Sixers desperately need three-point shooting. That when you look at the league standards across the NBA, Sixers as a team ranking 26th in the league in three-point attempts per game. Now, this is not the cure-all that you need to be shooting a high volume of 3 points to be a winning franchise. Obviously, each roster is constructed differently. And when you are built around a team like Joel Embiid, who's very mid-range heavy and very post heavy in his shot diet, you're never going to be leading the pack for 3-point attempts, but it is important to have balance, and frankly, there has not been enough. You want to look at that recent Brooklyn Nets loss, that the Nets attempted more than double the 3-point attempts that the Sixers did in that game, and it is simple math. When you're trading 2 points for 3 points, you're going to fall apart in a game, or you're going to fall behind in that specific matchup. So it's far too regular of an event that the Sixers are outshot from a 3-point attempt standpoint on a game-by-game basis, and the solution to that is to bring in a guy like Buddy Hield. Now, the other name that Jake Fischer brings up that brings some similar strengths and weakness, but I do want to talk about him individually here, is Bojan Bogdanovic. And Fischer writes, quote, "Another target for the Sixers is Pistons guard Bojan Bogdanovic," sources said, "who is on the books for $20 million this season, but has just $2 million in guaranteed for 2024 to 2025. Detroit has long shown an interest in a reunion with Tobias Harris, league sources told Yahoo Sports, but in any deal where the Sixers bring back Bogdanovic, it would seem Philadelphia doesn't want to part with Harris." So an interesting little note there. The asterisk that I'll throw in is I think the most likely trade candidate from the Sixers perspective would be Marcus Morris in both of these situations, him carrying just over a $17 million cap hit that you can add a little bit, I believe you need for Bogdanovic. For Buddy, you can just straight up trade Marcus Morris and then add whatever draft capital is necessary to get the deal done. But Bogdanovic brings a lot of similar strengths and weaknesses that, once again, just as the case with Buddy, he would immediately be the best shooter on the Sixers team. To take a look at his stats as a whole, this season averaging 20.2 points per game, also adding 3.4 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He's shooting 41.5% from beyond the three-point arc on 7.4 three-point attempts per game, which is a career high for Bogdanovic. This is a guy that even at age 34 is putting up close to career numbers. Last season was a 21.6 point per game scorer. Now, we know age is not the best thing here. That this is a guy on the downside of his career, but he's going to have a more limited role in a Philadelphia uniform. That he's not going to be asked to be getting the amount of shots and creating his own shots in the same way he currently is in Detroit. Now, Bogdanovic, I get this was a couple years ago, but I do think he deserves credit for, at a point in time, being a relatively solid defender. That back in the Jazz days, when those teams were constructed around Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, that Bojan Bogdanovic was asked to be the guy tasked with guarding the Kevin Durant's of the world, with the primary offensive weapon on the opposing team. I'm not saying he's Kawhi Leonard or some defensive stalwart, but he is a guy that is very competitive. He will compete on the defensive side of the ball, and I still think he plays with a fire, even in the days of playing in Detroit. That even as frustrating it is with this historic losing streak, there's been games that I flipped on, and I've been impressed with kind of the spark that he's bringing, especially given the circumstances. So when you keep in mind bringing that to a contender like the Sixers, that's something that's really appealing to me. He does have more size than Buddy. They both have some similar strengths as a potential movement shooter, a potential guy that can come off pin downs, just get free opportunities and let it fly. And both guys are guys that can absolutely be red hot, catch fire, and have a 20-plus point per game on just about an any night basis. That they each have that ability to explode, get hot, and really change the game from a Sixers perspective. Now, one of the things that I wanted to note here is as we get so close to this deadline, as it's rapidly approaching here, the Sixers have two things that they need to accomplish. Number one is you have to add guys that help this team stay afloat while Joel Embiid recovers from his meniscus surgery. But you also have to have guys that are a part of the playoff rotation and ceiling raisers as it pertains to championship contenders. I think both these guys fit that ability, that we know how effective shooters can be when playing alongside Joel Embiid. Think about J.J. Redick, think about Seth Curry, think about Georges Niang, even Marco Bellinelli, if you want to go back that far, Ersan Ilyasova. These are guys that are good shooters that became great shooters when playing alongside a guy with the gravity of Joel Embiid. I think Buddy Hield and Bojan Bogdanovic are each guys that could see their games taken to new levels when playing next to a superstar like that. Now, it's obviously going to start without Embiid on the floor, but that only adds to the reason that there needs to be more scoring. That these are both guys that can get red hot and see their numbers pop in a way that will be necessary to the Sixers team. So it's great to hear that Daryl Morey is at least being involved in the trade whispers. It's great to at least see these Sixers have their names attached to specific targets and frankly guys that I think could help this team in a major way. So I'm thrilled to see these names popping through. If we reach the point past Thursday's deadline where there are no significant deals done or no players that I believe help this team, it's a massive failure on the Sixers end. That if Joel intends on coming back this season, making a playoff run, as all signs are pointing to be the case, that you have to make sure the roster around him is built to help. That even in the best of circumstances, Joel Embiid at his healthiest, at this team playing its best ball, I still think that they were a piece away from a true championship contender. So you better find a way to get that piece while the big fella's resting. and he better be ready to ball when he comes back with a little bit of a reduced role on him. That maybe he doesn't have to score 70 points on a night basis for them to actually get the win. So shout out to Joel Embiid for seeming to try and muster through this recovery. Prayers up that this does go as seamless as possible. Hopefully that Daryl Morey can reach the finish line on one of these deals, and hopefully that Bojan Bogdanovic or Buddy Hield could be the caliber of shooter to take this Sixers team to another level. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments on both of those targets. Who would you prefer out of Buddy or Bojan? You can make the case for both. Frankly, I'm a little partial to Buddy Hield, that I'm just a fan of his game in a way that I would love to see it in a Sixers uniform, but I would not be mad for either one of these guys, and even happier if it's both of these guys. So let me know your guys' thoughts. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe, dropping a like on the video, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.